everyone, I'm Ayşe Gülistan and this is Invest in Türkiye Talks. So what are we going to do throughout these series? We'll be talking everything related to investment, from FDI inflows to entrepreneurship, the investment infrastructure in Türkiye, and trends and challenges that sectors may face in the near future. Today, I'm joined by the CEO of Midas, Egem Adarslan. Egem, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Ayşegül, thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Now, before we get talking about Midas, I want to get to know you first because I know that there's a story behind the journey that brought you here. You're a young, successful entrepreneur who has established and runs a successful Fintech platform, but you've also founded an international school. That's not something that we see in a lot of people. So can you tell us about your journey? Who is Egem Adarslan and what brought you here?
I was born and raised in Izmir, Turkiye. I went to school in Boston University to do electrical engineering, and following that I worked in Boston as an engineer for a year. My intention was to go to China to work in hardware. I was very passionate, and to this day I'm very passionate about hardware, but the visa situation didn't work out at the time, and I was looking for something to kind of push my boundaries. I became aware of a project in Izmir that my family was also involved. They were building a school that got into some financial troubles, and it had short-term loans that put the construction project into a kind of dangerous position. My brother mentioned it to me, and I got excited about it. The next day I left, and I rented a container and built an office in the construction, started hiring people, convinced the banks to turn the short-term loans into long-term loans, and in a matter of a very short amount of time, the project was supposed to take another year and a half, and we were able to finish it in less than 300 days with an incredible amount of hard work. And once we finished the project, we were intending to sell the school before, but I had the idea of a bilingual school with a different kind of curriculum where you wouldn't have any English classes, but you would have the entire curriculum bilingual from age of 4, mixed in with science and maths, a lot of science and maths. And I had this idea, so I wanted to start the school. I convinced everyone to let me take control of the school, pay all the loans, take full responsibility of the financial situation, and manage it. And that's how I got started. I started hiring teachers for kindergarten. I started writing curriculums. I had an idea of how teaching was different than learning. And that was very evident. It wasn't about teaching, it was about learning. And learning happened through acquiring information. And so I had this idea where if a teacher wouldn't move around in the classroom and try to get the students to move and do everything, they would look at each other and they would learn from each other. After 2 years, it became pretty successful. We ended up having a middle school, then grew into a high school. Now we have 900 students. There are 200 faculty members. Wow. It's a large K-12 private school.
And how old were you when you done that?
I was 23 years old.
Now, again, we spoke about your journey, but what key values and approaches shaped your career?
I would say if I had to distill all the things that I had to do along the way, it would come down mostly to discipline. I've been managing a business for 10 years now, and the first 5 years of it was 7 days, no time off, no days off. And the first 3.5 years of Midas was also extremely intense. And through that time, discipline helped me stay on top of things. And discipline creates consistency. Consistency creates performance, and then performance will always drive results. And that has been my go-to, I would say, value or routine of just sticking to my game, being consistent, being disciplined, showing up every day. Even the worst days, there's a quote I really like: your lost days are worse than your best days. So you don't want to lose any days. Just showing up every day is 50% of the job. And that's what I've done, showing up every day, even if we had to, be there very early, very late, Saturdays, Sundays, but being very disciplined about our approach and trying to be as consistent as possible. That was I think, number one thing that helped me throughout this journey. And the second thing I would say would be focus. You're in an environment where things are happening around you that are out of control, and they're happening every week. And focus, especially in those times, are very valuable because we focused on what we could control. I can control product development. I can control the experience I give to my users, the service I give to my users. And if I just focus on that every day and do my best, I know that through the noise, we're going to come out very strong. And we've been pretty good at, focusing heads down on our mission for the past decade, and that have really helped.
So shutting off outside noise is an important factor for success.
Yes, I always tell my team as well, live the life on noise cancelling headphones.
And how did that come from? You set up the school, you've got 900 students, you say. Then you also started Midas. So how did that come about? Where did the idea for Midas come from?
The school was very challenging because I had an incredible amount of loans. It took me 4 years to pay all the loans back, so it was hard. But I knew that the day I paid all the loans, that I would free my mind and I would start thinking differently. And so once I was able to do that, I paid all my loans. That week, I started learning new things. I knew it. I paid my last installment on a Friday, and Saturday morning I went to work and I started working on AI. I found a friend of mine who was doing masters in Switzerland at the time. He was working on machine learning, started working on that, started learning, and I was trying to understand how the technology worked and where in the commercial world I could apply that information to. And the first thing that came to my mind after 3 months of working on this was optimizing sales for FMCG companies. So, we have a lot of small markets around Turkey, like bakkals, that sell many different products, and they manually stock these products. So the FMCG company would call that market owner and be like, hey, we think you're going to run out of your current stock. You should order more. It's a very manual process. A friend of mine was a purchasing manager in one of these companies. That's how I kind of had the information that it was manual. And so I had this idea, okay, we can get the sales data from these companies, have an algorithm, and then if we get the sales data from other companies as well, we can join this data to improve everyone's prediction models, and then it would be good for everyone. I did this for 6 to 7 months, and I hated it. B2B was not for me. I didn't like going to companies and selling, and everything was very slow. And so after 7 months, I dropped it. I worked another 6 months on this idea of where else can I use this in. I found the stock market where I had this idea, if we could predict how the stock market would move, then maybe we could have some leverage. That was not for me either. That's what I've learned through that exploration, that quant stuff was not for me. It was very, a small number of people doing very advanced math kind of thing. It wasn't my thing. But through that exploration, I found out about the brokerage world. I met a lot of people in this world. I saw that industry wasn't growing. There was a talent problem. No one was investing. And most of all, there was no good products. And I saw this industry where it was just, it was waiting for someone to come and solve all these problems and build a beautiful product. And that was kind of my calling.
Tell us about Midas, the size of the company, what you do exactly, and what you aim to achieve.
So we're Turkey's largest retail investing platform. We offer Turkish equities, US equities, ETFs, Turkish mutual funds, foreign exchange and foreign currency exchange, and gold. So you can think of Midas as a place where you can handle most of your investments as of today. And we are the highest number of active traders in the country amongst all brokers, including the largest bank brokers as well. Our intention is to be the only place you need for your money. And we had this idea from the get-go that we will build this beautiful product where you would handle your money and it would be a product that you would want to visit every day. Like a banking app is not something that you want to visit every day.
Yeah, definitely.
And our idea was that we want to have a beautiful product, an elegant product where you will want to, even though nothing's coming in and out, you didn't receive any money, you don't need to use the app. We want you to get in the app and surf around and go around. We want that experience to be delightful. And we picked investments as the place to start, and it's been a good journey, and now that journey is extending.
And talking about extending, we're aware that you're entering the cryptocurrency market as well. So what are the goals related to crypto?
We're late in crypto, I'll say that. We were, the past year, we were building a thesis on what we thought crypto was going to do for the next 10 years. And it took us some time to build that thesis, because we didn't just want to, build a product where you'll buy and sell. Everything we do, we want it to be ahead of the time. We want to differentiate, and we want to make sure that we're building the product of 10 years ahead. So for crypto, our intention is not to be an exchange, but to be a product where we focus on interoperability, and we become the bridge between traditional finance and decentralized finance. The biggest slogan I can tell you is that we want to make crypto not scary and very, very simple. And we want that connection between crypto and traditional banking rails to be very smooth, so that at times you can't even tell in which world you are.
Okay, that brings me on to my next question, because I was just about to say people are quite scared of entering that market that you're talking about, because we're so used to having centralized banks, do our money business for us, that we don't really take that responsibility ourselves. So you said that you wanted to be that bridge, but there's also the question of security. People that don't use alternative methods like, Midas, are quite scared about the security risks that they think these kind of platforms have. So what do you do to alleviate these kind of fears? How do you ensure the security of the data of the people that use your platform?
I think we're lucky in Turkey, because most of the clearing systems and custody systems are centralized. So when you buy a stock through Midas, I don't hold your stock. Your stock is held in Takas Bank, which is a centralized custodial system owned by the government. And if I need to do a clearing operation, then I use a clearing firm that's also owned by the government, and all of these things are centralized. So you send us your money, that money stays in one of the licensed banks, whether it be a public bank or a private bank, but one of the largest that you also know, that you trust, and you keep your money in. And if you buy a stock with us, an equity with us, or a mutual fund with us, that's custodied in government services. And so I think the government has turned the system into a quite safe system. I think we're lucky. Not every country has these centralized, well-integrated entities that ensure the safety of a user's assets. And I think a user's assets is the most important thing when it comes to fintech. So the information security aspect and the technological security is complicated still, and it's sophisticated, and it's hard, like everywhere else in the world. But in terms of asset security, I think we're pretty lucky in Turkey, because the system is well set, and it's very good at absorbing the risks and managing them.
So you talk about the system in Türkiye and how you've been able to work with the system that the government has provided. But what would you say about this relationship between traditional financial institutions and fintech companies? Because it always feels like, as people from the outside, like myself, it always feels like there's tension between the two, and one doesn't like the other and the way that they do things. So would you say that the public sector can act as a facilitator here for you and companies like Midas, or is there a bit of tension as we perceive it to be?
So I'll divide it into two, where there's relationships of fintechs with the public sector, regulators, and then there's a relationship with fintechs with banks. I think the bank aspect is complex. It's not easy. And I'll tell you this, banks are some of our biggest partners. We work with 14 banks for on and off ramps. We're integrated with them. We run a treasury of more than $300 million a day, and banks are our biggest partners. They make money from this, and we allow, and this operation allows our users to deposit and withdraw funds from Midas. Most of our uninvested cash lays with banks. If we're doing margin trading, we actually get the money from banks. So Midas actually works very closely with banks, but we're also big competitors, right? Midas is the fastest growing retail investment platform. We're the broker that's getting the most market share per quarter. And so it's impossible not to see that as a competitor. And we compete with banks head on in terms of brokerage. And the one thing that we've done that no one has enjoyed is bring down the costs, right? Bring down the cost to the user. I think the biggest change that Midas brought to the market is we took, minimum commissions from $25 to down to $1.50. And the margins were very wide before. We got in, we put all the costs down to the bare minimum. The user is very happy, obviously, but the competitors are not. Everyone had to lower their prices, which I think is good for the free market. Right? You bring competition, that bring the prices down, and that's good for the users. That had to happen. It was either going to be Midas or it was going to be someone else, but that had to happen. So we are competing on the brokerage side. We're working very closely on the banking side.
And in addition to the relationship you have with banks, Egem, how about the other public bodies, bureaucracy in the country? How do they act as facilitators for fintech companies?
I would say enthusiastic. I had this interesting experience I like thinking about. I was 28. I wanted to start this business. I've never not once purchased a stock in my life. I don't know finance. I have no idea how this world works, and I'm just trying to explore. And one day I reached out to the Capital Markets Board of Turkey. And I reached out to the board itself, like the president, and I said, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm working on. I think this business model is going to work really well. I don't have license. I don't have money, but I think I can do this. They gave me an appointment, which I think is wild. A 28-year-old, reaching out to a bureaucratic body and gets to meet the president and its members. And they gave me an hour of their time. I went to Ankara and I told them about what I wanted to do, what my vision of the product in the future was going to look like. And they were they were interested. They were very enthusiastic. They listened to me. They introduced me to the right people in the Capital Markets Board of Turkey. And I think the bureaucracy listening to an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur trying to do this that has no idea, that's valuable. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to bureaucracy. Bureaucracy should have its doors open to new ideas and new business models. And I think we have that. Once you get through the door, things are obviously more complex, like it's everywhere else in the world. Sometimes you're trying to disrupt a big market, like we're trying to do with mutual funds now, and people are timid, right? Because the system is the financial system everywhere around the world has these checks and balances. And if you disrupt one place, you don't know what's going to be disrupted in the other place. And so when it's balances like that, there's at times timid, but I think the Turkish bureaucracy is actually very interested and very curious almost. Like, I love that our bureaucracy is curious about what we're doing. They're constantly asking questions and they're constantly watching us, how the business model is evolving. I think that door is open.
Obviously, we have the young generation, which is an advantage because people can easily adapt to new technologies. But at the same time, I think it's fair to say that we need to increase financial and digital literacy levels in the country, not just in Turkey, across the world, because people don't really know what these changes are. They only see it if they have to use that kind of technology. So are you doing anything to address that literacy gap that we have, or is that something that Midas isn't on the cornerstone of right now?
We're contrarian when it comes to financial literacy. This probably comes from me managing a school before. I've been in a classroom for over 1,000 hours and I watch students how they learn. And one thing that I have a very high conviction on is that literacy doesn't happen through teaching. Literacy happens when people acquire information, right? You can say something, it doesn't mean that the other person acquires that information. And I think there's steps. If you think of it as a pyramid, there's steps into how financial literacy is built. And I think the entire world is getting this wrong. Not just us in Turkey, but I think the entire world is getting this wrong. So if you want literacy, the first thing that you need to have is access. Imagine you don't have enough universities and you're telling people, oh, you should get educated. Look, we have all these programs for you. You should go and listen, but you don't have enough universities. So the number one thing that you have to build is access. Opening a brokerage account before Midas took 1 week. You have to fill out 20s of forms. You have to do 50 signatures. We asked you for 45 different information. It was so difficult, as if we didn't want you to open a brokerage account. And so the number one thing that had to happen for financial literacy is access. If you want to buy 1,000 liras worth of stock and start saving, that should be very easy. I should be able to open an account for you in under 10 minutes, and you shouldn't have to go through any friction to do that, right? I shouldn't have to ask you 100 information. I think that was the most key thing that we had to do. And I'm proud that Turkey was able to, instill this digital onboarding laws. Works great. We're iterating as a country, and I think in like 1 to 2 years, digital onboarding in Turkey is going to be very, very good because we have a lot of centralized government systems where we are able to confirm your identity. So that's number one thing if you want to build financial literacy. The next thing is having low costs or low prices in services. If you have to pay $25 to buy a stock, then
I'm not going to buy it.
You're not going to buy it,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter if I say, well, you should get more information about financial products. You should educate yourself on it. It's too damn expensive. And so it's not going to happen. So the second part of that pyramid is, how do you bring the costs down? How do you make sure that the user has to pay the bare minimum they have to pay for that service? And that was the second part of our mission. The first part of the Midas mission was expand access, right? Eliminate friction, make it easy for people to do their first investment. The second part is we want to have the lowest costs possible. Midas is, and I say this in the company as well, we're probably the only broker in Turkey that our North Star metric, our biggest focus is how much did we save for the customer? How much did we facilitate savings? If you did your investments with us, you saved a lot of money. We've saved our users over $180 million in funds, right? Through having the lowest cost in our services. And that's very important. Give people access and have low cost services so that people can learn on their own. Of course, providing information. Look, we're probably the biggest content game in brokerage. We're the largest YouTube channel in brokers. We have the largest account in Twitter. We have the largest account even in TikTok. If you look at our content, the amount of content that we've produced so far, it was seen over 80 million, it's watched over 80 million. We have done a lot of things to build high quality financial content to teach people how investments work. But that's only the third step. First step starts with access, and then low costs, and then you provide the information, then you let people learn. You let people learn their own. You have to do your first investment. You just have to buy your first stock that's 100 liras to start learning about financial literacy. And then you're going to build it. There's no shortcut. You have to invest for a couple of years to kind of learn and get the hang of how the system works, how the financial system works. So the earlier I give you the access, the cheaper it is, the earlier you're able to get into it. And then you start building that information. And along the way, I'm always helping you with great content. And so I think that's how financial literacy works. And we're working towards that.
Well, you've sold Midas to me, so I'm definitely going to download the app after this. But now moving on to Türkiye in general, Fintech is one of our strengths, right? Do you think that Fintech is going to bring major disruption into finance as we're used to it, or has it already?
I don't think it's going to be one big step. I think it's going to be a lot of many small steps along the way. The financial system is built upon a lot of learnings, right? The reason why we have strong banks right now is because those banks went through a lot of crisis. The reason why our banking bureaucracy has a lot of know-how is because it managed a lot of crises. So the financial system is built upon these learnings. And I don't think it's smart. And I'm going to say this, I don't think it's smart to, put all those learnings in one side and try to disrupt something in a very major way. I think the next generation of finance is going to build by leveraging technology and taking one small step at a time. And I see this in brokerage, right? The entire brokerage industry is being rebuilt. We're building a lot of technologies. The clearing systems are being rebuilt. The custody systems are being rebuilt. Ledger systems are being rebuilt. And teams are building, like we're building this one at a time. Business models, on the other hand, are going to be disruptive. I think this is going to be where we're going to see the most difference. In my opinion, the financial system in Turkey right now and a lot of places in the world focus on aggregation of services, right? They're trying to, they see all the little parts of their business as these little businesses, and there's one app and they try to integrate all these businesses into this app. And that creates an aggregation model. That's not the future that we're seeing. The future that we believe in is vertical integration, where you have this one beautiful product where where all your businesses work in harmony, and that you've built all those businesses keeping in mind that your core center of service is that one mobile application or one platform. That's, I think, is going to be very different. I'll give you an example. One of the largest banks in Turkey, if you pull up their app, they have close to 90 services there. 40 of them doesn't work. That's an aggregation model. If you open up Midas, you'll only see 3 services. All of them work beautifully in harmony, presenting a great user experience. That's where we see the future in these beautiful vertically integrated products that build these businesses one step at a time. There's good examples of this around the world. I think Revolut is a good example. Nubank is a good example. Robinhood is a good example. And that's where I think the future of financial products in Turkey is going to be looking like. And I think the major difference that we're going to have is competition, right? I think the cost of services are going to significantly go down. You're going to have almost instant transfers, instant actions in finance with the lowest cost possible. And you're going to have, and it's going to be very fast. I think Turkey is already probably one of the fastest places in the world in terms of being able to move money. It's going to get even faster.
Exciting. As somebody that doesn't know much about the sector, but that's exciting to hear. And like we say, Turkey's, one of the biggest strengths we have is the fintech sector. But what would you say that needs to be, there's always room for improvement, obviously. What would you say, and this will be my final question for you today, what does Turkey need to do to attract more FDI into the fintech sector?
I think there's stages that governments discover. The first stage is kind of promoting, right? The governments, and I think as Turkey, we do this as well. We go around and we invite people and we promote our system and we promote our companies. I think once you do that, you will see that, and I think governments see that that's not very effective. And the most effective way of attracting more capital and more investments is actually through having the best companies, right? Midas is, I think, one of the good examples of this. We never had to go out for a Series A round. Investors came to us. We never officially said we're raising. Investors wanted to invest for 12 months, and we were saying we're heads down. We don't need money because we're growing really well. We're profitable. And when the time came for us to get more capital, we just had to raise our hands and say, okay, we're getting in capital, we're taking in capital, and we closed our round. The best companies are the ones that don't need to go out and promote themselves. And as Turkey, if we want to promote more foreign investments into the country, I think the best way to do it is not by telling our stories, by having the best companies. If Midas is the best brokerage company in the region, if you have the best food delivery company in the region, if you have the best e-com company in the region, then you don't even need to promote yourself because the foreign investors have their eyes open. They're looking at all the business models around the world, and they want to, their problem is they don't have good places to invest that capital. And so if you're good enough, they'll throw money at you. I think as a government, if we focus on the companies that we have, how to make them better, how to open their way up, how to grow them, that's the most efficient way. Because if Midas grows, we get to attract another, $500 million to $1 billion in capital. If you put another 1,000 startups in Turkey, that's the amount of capital that they can get in. It's easier to get one company to be better than 1,000 companies or business models to work. And so I think it's very important for us to understand what's the bottleneck for our great companies to grow and be better, and let's solve those.
Now, again, that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for being with us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Today with Egem and Arslan, we talk about Egem's interesting journey from saving a school from its financial troubles to establishing a fintech platform. Egem tells us about Midas and the services they provide, and how fintech may change the financial system as we're used to it today. You can find our podcast on all streaming platforms, and for more updates and information, follow Invest in Turkey on social media. Stay tuned for more episodes where we'll be talking more about investment in Turkey.